This is just a short update video on what I'm doing on the 175. I put the new clutch discs in, but as I showed you in the past videos, these clutch discs aren't that worn. They're only about 2 to 3 thousandths thinner than the new ones. And I don't think that's enough to make the clutch slip. It might, but I don't think it is. You know, you're talking a grand total, maybe 15 thousandths difference altogether. The new discs are in there, but I ordered new pressure plate springs. I think that these could be the problem if they're not pushing down this hard enough, the clutch will slip. So the new springs, you know, make sure that this is pushed, because when you, I don't know if I can lift this out. So when you pull a clutch lever on the handlebars, it moves a shaft through the engine and pushes this up. That pushes this plate up and disengages the clutch. What engages the clutch is these springs and the pressure plate. And if these aren't pushing the pressure plate tight enough against the discs and all the other plates, the clutch will slip. These are the original springs, and spring do lose their tension over time, especially with years of heat and being compressed, and I'm just thinking that these could be the culprit of the slipping clutch. So I ordered new ones and they're on their way, and when they get here I'll put them in. This goes on there, and then the bolts are torqued down in here, and that's when they're torqued down, it pushes on those springs, and that's what engages the clutch. Just put the bolts in so they don't get lost. So that's just a little kind of update. I'm just waiting on springs for the clutch. So one more thing I did was I took the chain guard to my trusty auto parts store that I've dealt with for past 35 years for paint supplies, and I had a quart of paint mixed. I have the hardeners and the reducers and all additives for the paint, and I have zinc chromate primer. And basically, if it's aluminum, magnesium, stainless steel, any non-ferrous metal, you really need to use zinc chromate primer, otherwise the paint is not going to stick. The zinc chromate kind of etches into the metal. It bonds to it really well, and then the paint will stick to the primer, so the primer sticks to your aluminum and you get a paint job that lasts. If you don't zinc chromate prime it, if you just try and use regular primer or just spray the paint on without priming, it's going to come off in no time. I'm going to bead blast the side cover, this side of it. I'm not going to bead blast the inside of it, but I put tape on the oil gallery holes so I don't get any glass beads in them, and then I'll clean them out anyway just to make sure, and where the Kickstarter goes in. And this side is the side that I'm going to glass bead, and I just put some tape over the oil seal. I can sand around that lightly. I'm going to sand it all out, but I just want to, you know, get this cleaned up and look a little better. So I'm going to lightly hit it with the glass bead blast cabinet, and I never use sand blaster on engine components. Never use sand. Always use glass beads. The glass beads will melt in the combustion chamber. They don't destroy the engine like sand does if you accidentally get one little grain or two little grains in it. But I'm going to clean it out so I have 0 grains. I don't want to take any chances on damaging the engine. Up pretty quick. I have to say, I've never seen a factory finish come off so easy in my life, as you saw when I threw it in the cabinet. It just completely just run it across and it was off. But you can see some scratches and pits in the aluminum from, you know, were gouged through. So I'm going to take some, probably some 400 and then some 600 and sand that out and sand a few spots that look, you know, just kind of like where these, from dirt on shoes probably and stuff. So I can clean that up. And then I'll zinc chromate prime it. Didn't get anything much on. I just blew it off with compressed air, but I'm going to leave that taped up until I'm ready to put it back on the engine, then I'll clean it out. I don't think I'm going to prime it. I'm going to just leave it bare. I'll sand it out, give it a sanding before I prime it. I got to change the oil seal. Probably do that after I prime it because I don't want to get paint on the new seal, although I suppose I could mask it off. We'll see. Got the new coil. So I might just put the coil in. And I got it. Brand new condenser. So I'll probably put the coil in and the spark plug boot end on and the new points. Look at this gasket kit, even comes with these little rubber grommets for on the cylinder jug. So I can take those out when I clean the fins and then put the new ones in. I think I'll give the head of these a quick bead blast. I'll just put some masking tape to hold them all together, and then I'll just quickly give them a shot, and then they'll paint up nice too. I lay my bolts out on some tape, and then I'll just pull the extra tape and just tape it in between, and that's how I paint bolts or sandblast bolts, either way. Ready for the blast cabinet. And that's a good way, again, like I say, to paint bolts too, either way. Down, put them down, turn them around, do them over, make sure they don't fall out. But I've already done them. I do them that way, then I just turn them over and do them the other way. I want to show you a little something I've done here with my cabinet to make life easier. Here's all the screws blasted and cleaned up. Now what I did was I put some screen door screen in between the screen door screen is in between this and that, so that you can't see my finger. What am I doing pointing? So when you drop bolts or fasteners or anything small, you don't lose it down in your media. You can just get a little magnet and pull it out. If it's non-magnetic, just lift the rack up and reach in there. And that screen eventually gets, you know, hammered out from bead blasting. I replace it about once every 5 years or so. It takes a lot of beating. I get metal screening when I put screen in there. So that's just kind of a little tip for bead blast cabinets. I run my cabinet at 60 psi, and I have 2 air dryers, one on the high pressure, one on the low pressure. I use this for when I'm painting cars too. You know, it keeps some moisture out, but it's important you keep it out of your bead blast cabinet too. That's what I use for my cabinet. You think you can get that at Tractor Supply, Harbor Freight. A lot of places carry that stuff. Save some mess in the garage. I made this little trough because every time I opened the door of the cabinet, the sand that was collected along here and here would drop and make a mess. So what I do, and you get sand on here, is I just slam the door, open the door, that gets the sand off the sludge, and I have a can with a paintbrush, and I just brush this back into the cabinet, and then I brush this down into my can and back into the cabinet. So that just kind of keeps the mess down to a minimum. And the screws look much better. I don't blast the threads. If I need to clean up the threads, I run a dye on them. These are metric, so I'd run obviously metric, but it cleaned up pretty good. You can see the little Honda has a little marking on the screw. I don't know if that shows up or not. I'll put it so it's at the top. So these are all original screws, cleaned up, ready to go back in the motor and be painted. I don't know, I was thinking they painted those side covers off the engine, so these screws probably weren't painted originally. Maybe I'll buff them up real shiny and then mask them so it looks a little more correct. We'll see what kind of work is involved in that. One very important step I forgot to mention is wipe your surfaces down really good with lacquer thinner before you even start working on it. Get the oils and waxes and everything off. So this is ready to sand. I pulled the tape back and blasted right up to the edge of where the seal goes. One more item. I don't know if I showed this or not, but this is the little plastic piece that was broken for the neutral safety switch underneath on this side here. Right here, this piece, I don't think it'll show up, but this is what the wire goes through and fastens onto that to insulate it from the cover. Raided my sandpaper hoard and got a piece of this 400 grit that I'm going to sand that out with. And when I say sandpaper hoard, every time I go to estate sales and I see sandpaper, I just buy it tons and tons. Emery floss, stuff out in the garage, these boxes, full boxes of abrasives for like air files, grinding discs, more grinding discs, just envelopes and envelopes of 3M sandpaper. Everything in this box came from estate sales. I bet you this whole box, everything in here, I probably have paid no more than $10 if you added up everything I bought in here at estate sales. You know, I might buy one at one estate sale and another thing at another sale, and over the course of the years, this thing stays pretty full and I never have to buy it at the auto parts. I mean, look at what, like if I bought 5 of those stick-on discs at an auto parts, they're $10. And I go and buy like a package like this, or like these, or even like those. A lot of times you can get like 5 packages like that for $1. You know, I think I paid $1 or $2 for those per box of those, and those are probably about $30 a box if you go to the paint supply house. So I have 1500, 600, 400, 320, 80 grit in these, 60 grit in these, I think 120 grit in these. Same with these. Everything, like I say, there's nothing here that I bought in the store. Even this with the auto value, I did not buy that in a store. These, I think Home Depot sells these, and I found these in a estate sale. So they'll all be used. Everything here gets used, guaranteed. This is the time-consuming part I really dislike, the sanding. Now you can see why you got to sand it out. You can see all these little, this is where the paint was still on it, where it's fairly smooth, and where it's a little pitted and rough, that's where the paint was off. And then over the years, aluminum has oxidized, magnesium, I should say, it's magnesium, has oxidized and kind of left the edges around there. So I'm going to sand it as smooth as I can, and then the primer, I'll prime it, zinc chromate it, and then maybe hit it with a filler primer and just lightly sand it, just so when it's painted you don't see these imperfections. If I painted it over that, you'd see everything, it would just telegraph through. So you got to finish your surfaces to where you don't see the imperfections. So I just sit here with this on my lap and with a towel to keep my clothes clean, and just slowly work at it, just lightly sand it. Don't want to go too crazy on it. And this is, like I say, 400 grit. I could probably use 320 or something to take it down quicker, but I think the 400 will just do fine here. sanded out pretty good. All the lines and stuff, you don't feel anything anymore. I can even take my fingernail and not feel it. So I think a little filler primer after I zinc chromate it and give it another sanding. I'm going to wait until it's ready for paint to prime because, you know, I'm going to get it oily, putting it on the motor and doing the motor and cleaning this, and I'm going to clean all this before I paint it. So this is going to get stuff on it. And then I can just wipe it down really good with lacquer thinner, shoot it with the zinc chromate, let it dry overnight, shoot it with a good quality filler primer, let it dry overnight, and then 600 sand it, and then let it dry overnight again, and then shoot some finish on it. And it should look pretty darn nice. It looks nice just sanded out. You know, I could buff it and make it look like chrome, but keeping it looking like that would be a chore, so it's just easier to repaint it like it originally was. And this is, these die cast pieces, you know, they weren't perfect when they were cast. You can see none of this down in here. That skid pan was here, and this was caked in grease, and the paint was pretty good here. These imperfections are casting imperfections on it. And I have a feeling I'm going to make this thing look better than what it was when it was brand new when I'm done here. But I don't want to fill this in. I want that to remain the way it is. So I'm just going to put the primer on it really super thin. These pits are so minuscule, a pinhead won't even fit in them. So there's the filler primer may, or the zinc chromate primer may even fill those in. But this is the most tedious, time-consuming, and most important part of restoring anything is sanding things out and getting them prepped for finish. And that's the part I dislike doing the most. I hate sanding. Everything else I enjoy doing, I just don't like sanding. Well, if you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, and thank you for watching.